To adults, 10 years might not seem like a long time. It can feel like it goes by in the blink of an eye. But in that time, my daughter, who was once in elementary school, has grown up and is now old enough to be an adult with a job. My husband Paul left us on his own and has been living with his parents for 10 years now, neglecting his responsibilities as a father. My mother-in-law, who allowed this, is no different. Even if they offered me a house where all our generations could live together, what they probably want from me is just to be their housekeeper. It's too late now, even if they start acting friendly because they sense money coming their way. I've spent the last decade raising my child alone, unlike Paul, who has wasted his time. My name is Judy. I'm 53 years old, a full-time housewife with a part-time job. My only daughter, Hannah, who lives at home while attending university, recently got a job offer and will start working next year. I worry about her because she's still inexperienced in the ways of the world, but I'm happy she has grown up well. Raising a child seemed to go by in a flash, but I still have her student loan to repay. For over 20 years, I've put my daughter first, but now I wonder what my life will be like from here on. It might be nice to travel, enjoy hobbies, or join the gym I've always wanted to go to. However, around this time, both of my parents passed away. Their death was sudden. They died instantly in a rear-end collision. It was so unexpected that I had no time to grieve, as I was busy with funeral preparations and dealing with inheritance matters. After meeting with the tax accountant and things had calmed down, I finally broke down in tears and realized I should let my husband know. I picked up my phone and called him, but there was no answer. Of course, he wouldn't pick up. I had tried several times before the funeral, but he never responded. I sent messages, but he didn't reply. After several attempts, I got busy and forgot about him. More than a week passed. I don't consider myself heartless for not thinking about my husband at such a time. In fact, it's been years since he stopped coming home. He's not missing. He's living at his parents' house. Since he left on his own, he has kept his distance from me. It's troublesome and annoying when I can't reach him in an emergency. I can only leave a message on his parents' home phone. I was confused when he first left. I don't really know why he left since he refused to talk to me about it, but I stopped caring once I got busy with childcare and work. It seemed pointless to try to understand someone who would go to such lengths to abandon his family. From the beginning of our marriage, he prioritized his own family over us. We argued about this many times. Even when I stressed that we had our own family to take care of, he would break his promises whenever his mother asked for a favor. It didn't matter if we had plans or a trip booked. I did feel like he tried to contribute to the family when our daughter was young, but when she became a teenager and grew distant from him, things changed. That year, his mother suddenly hurt her back, and though there was a lot of snow and my daughter and I had colds, he decided to help his parents instead and never came back. I don't know how a man who couldn't do any household chores was useful, but my mother-in-law insisted he could stay as long as he wanted. She spoiled him, and he got comfortable living with his parents. To her, I was the bad daughter-in-law who took her precious son away. Since I had no choice, I called my husband's parents' house. My mother-in-law answered the phone. "Hello, Mother. It's Judy. Is Paul there?" "I can't reach him." "What's wrong?" "I need to talk to him. Can you put him on the line, please?" "What do you need to talk to him about? I'll let him know." This was the usual conversation, which is why I haven't spoken directly to my husband in years. Actually, my parents have passed away. What? Considering the situation, we had a small funeral with only close family and friends. Why didn't you tell me about this important thing right away? I tried several times. I can't believe this. How could you lack such common sense? I had no idea what she was talking about. What did she mean by common sense? It's outrageous. Why would you wait to tell me until after the funeral is over? That's why By the way, what will you do with your parents' house? We're gathering as a family this weekend to sort things out. My mother-in-law paused for a moment and said, "The big house?" "Yes, it might take some time since the house is huge." "I see." My mother-in-law laughed in a strange way. "Do you have something to say?" "No, not at all. It's nothing." "Is that so? Then I'll excuse myself." After hanging up, my daughter, Hannah, looked at me with concern. "Are you okay? You look upset. There's no need to force yourself to contact Grandma or Dad. You're too diligent, Mom," my daughter said, worried. "It's not that simple." "You have way too much sense of obligation, Mom," she said. I responded to her concern. I didn't want people to think I was being unreasonable, but inside I was furious. I even thought about cutting ties with my in-laws completely. However, I knew that to my daughter, Paul was still her only father, so it wasn't that simple to break away from them. The weekend arrived and my daughter and I went to my family home to help with the cleanup. My siblings and I all played our parts, and the work progressed steadily. Clearing out a house that no one had lived in was harder than I imagined, so we decided to leave the larger furniture and appliances for a professional service to handle. Suddenly, I got a call from my mother-in-law, which was unusual. She cheerfully asked, "Judy, how's the cleanup going? Is everything all right?" It was like she had good news. Then she added, "Actually, I'm busy with something urgent right now and won't be able to make it today, sorry for that." I wasn't expecting her to come help anyway. We've barely seen each other since my husband left, so why would she say something like that? I didn't think she even knew where my family home was. I said, "It's okay, please don't worry about it." "Don't be shy, we're family, so it's natural to help each other out," she continued. Normally, my mother-in-law is self-centered, but she seemed to be showing some understanding this time. I decided to genuinely accept her offer. "By the way, when you said you're tidying up the house, you mean sorting through belongings, right?" "Yes, there are so many things and it's quite a hassle," I replied. "Right, it must be difficult to be surrounded by so many things." "Yes, especially with dresses and artworks. It's really challenging when there are items we don't know what to do with." "I see, that sounds wonderful." Suddenly, I felt a chill as I realized my mother-in-law's true intentions. I was foolish to think she was genuinely concerned. How could she have been worried about not being able to help? "Is that all you wanted to discuss?" I asked. "Actually, I was curious about how much your parents left behind." "What?" I was shocked. "Well, it's my turn next after all. I just wanted to know, merely for reference." "That varies from one family to another." "Well, yes, but it wouldn't hurt to tell me a little, would it?" I couldn't hold back my irritation. In the 10 years we hadn't seen each other, my mother-in-law seemed to have grown more greedy. My parents had clearly stated in their will that the inheritance would be divided equally among us siblings. Needless to say, my mother-in-law had no right to interfere. "Let's make this clear. The inheritance will be divided into 3, so it has nothing to do with you, Mother. I'm busy right now, so I'll excuse myself." With that, I ended the call. Her attitude was extremely rude. My parents had just passed away, and instead of offering condolences, she only asked about the inheritance. My daughter, who had been tidying up another room, came over. "Was that Grandma on the phone?" "Yes, it was." "What happened?" "Nothing for you to worry about," I replied with a forced smile, but my daughter looked slightly displeased. "I'm an adult now, you know. Stop treating me like a child." I hadn't meant to treat her that way, but her assertive response surprised me. Indeed, she was now old enough to be treated as a full-fledged adult. I felt a mix of happiness and an indescribable sense of loneliness. "Mom, I know what's going on." "What do you mean?" "If my guess is right, I want you to make one promise." "A promise? What kind?" That's when I made a special promise with my daughter. A week passed and the house cleanup was nearly finished. I was thinking of returning to work when the doorbell rang. Thinking it was the delivery guy, I opened the door to an unpleasant surprise. I should have checked first. If I had known who it was, I wouldn't have opened the door. Standing there was my mother-in-law, and next to her, a loose, unshapely figure with thinning hair fluttering in the breeze. It was a middle-aged man wearing a stretched-out sweatshirt, looking filthy, my spouse Paul. I couldn't believe it when I saw who was at the door. I tried to close it, saying they had the wrong address, but my mother-in-law quickly said, "Don't joke around, Judy." It was shocking to see them here without any notice. My mother-in-law, who always stayed close to her son, seemed unusually cheerful. She walked confidently into the house. "Wait, Mother." I called out, but my husband followed her inside. Even though it was technically his home too, it felt strange after a 10-year absence. He was practically a stranger to me now, and I certainly didn't want to welcome him in, especially looking so unkempt. "I have a surprise for you, Judy. I thought you'd be pleased," my mother-in-law said cheerfully. My husband sat down next to her. "Oh, I'd like some coffee, please. Paul, how about you?" "I'll have tea. Judy, please bring us some." I couldn't believe their audacity. How could my husband, who left without a word and lived with his parents for 10 years, now demand tea as if nothing had happened. I wanted to scream, but I kept my composure and asked, "What's the occasion? What's wrong, Judy? Make it quick." My mother-in-law replied. "If you have no business here, please leave," I said calmly. "What a rude daughter-in-law," she muttered, but I felt no obligation to be polite to someone who showed up after 10 years, following their own whims. Just then, my daughter Hannah came downstairs. "It's been so long, Grandma." Her eyes widened in surprise. Even my husband seemed shocked by her reaction. "Hannah, you've grown so much." Who are you?" she asked, not recognizing the man next to her grandmother. "It's me, Dad," my husband said. "Wait, Dad?" Hannah was understandably confused. She hadn't seen him since she was in elementary school. "Sit down here," her father instructed, pointing to the seat next to him. "No, absolutely not," Hannah replied, stepping back. "I have a unique condition that makes me ill if I don't stand. Don't worry about it." I felt sorry for my daughter, suddenly facing this awkward situation. "Take a look at this," my mother-in-law said, pulling out architectural plans from an envelope. The plans showed a luxurious home with enough rooms for 4 families, a rooftop garden, and even a catalog for luxury cars. "How do you like it?" she asked. "What is this?" I asked, confused. "It's our new home, isn't it wonderful?" My mother-in-law said, expecting my agreement. She added, "You can choose the kitchen and utilities, Judy, since you'll be the one using them." "Using them? What do you mean?" I asked. "I recently realized we should live together as a family. Since we just happened to come into some money, don't you agree it's the perfect time?" she explained. "I don't know the specifics, but how does this involve me?" I questioned. "We're family, aren't we?" "I believe family possessions should be shared," she replied. It became clear to me that my mother-in-law was out of control. Desperate to understand the situation, I turned to my husband. "What do you think?" But they just exchanged looks and nodded silently. Then my mother-in-law whispered something to him, like they were having a secret meeting. Finally, my husband spoke up. "Seems like it's time for me to return home." I was confused and let out a sound. "With the $3 million we inherited, I'm thinking of building a 2-family house to live there with my parents," he said smugly. My mother-in-law nodded, pleased. "Did you hear that, Mom? It's just like I said." My daughter exclaimed. I couldn't help but laugh. "Really? It turned out just as you said. Hannah, you're amazing," I said, and we shared a laugh. The atmosphere lightened, and even my mother-in-law and husband seemed pleased. "I'm glad you two agree. The construction date is already set, and all that's left is to pay the down payment," my mother-in-law said. But Hannah confronted them. "You're completely wrong, Grandma, Dad. Don't you think you're being a bit too oblivious? Even if you say you want to live together, I absolutely refuse to take care of the 2 of you, who have troubled Mom for years." My mother-in-law was shocked. "What?" "Mom, I won the bet, so keep your promise," Hannah said energetically. All right, I agreed. As we discussed the situation, my mother-in-law suddenly asked, "What do you mean, what promise?" My daughter, Hannah, responded sharply, "Grandma, it seems you can't tell the difference between what's yours and what's not. We bet on whether you were after the inheritance." "Huh? What does that mean?" My mother-in-law asked, puzzled. "If you could tell the difference, you would have told Dad to go back to his own home long ago. But you always said families should stay together," Hannah explained. Then my husband suddenly raised his voice. "I left this house because of you two." My daughter and I exchanged confused looks, not understanding what he was getting at. "I would have forgiven you immediately if you had just apologized. I was waiting for just one word from you both," he continued. "Wait, you lost me. What do you mean?" I asked. "You told me to leave, Judy," he said. I tried to recall but couldn't remember ever telling him to leave. "Have you really forgotten that snowy night when I came home tired from work, and you told me to leave?" Finally, I remembered a faint memory. That night, Hannah and I were bedridden with a cold. He came home without bringing anything and asked, "What's for dinner?" I had simply asked him to dine out. To think he held on to that for years drained the strength out of me. How trivial was that? "Is that really what happened?" I asked, still confused. "Yes, and that's why I'm baffled." "Why did you leave it like that?" he said. "It's your fault. I tried to contact you many times," I responded, looking at my mother-in-law, who smirked with guilt for not relaying the messages. "Apologize and I'll forgive everything. Let's forget the past and start fresh as a family," he said. At this, Hannah couldn't contain her laughter. "Dad, didn't you know? Mom has been preparing for divorce for 5 years." "What?" he asked, shocked. "The promise I made with my daughter was to get divorced if my mother-in-law was acting out of greed for the inheritance. It would mean endless troubles ahead, prompting me to make my own decisions," I explained, feeling relieved as if shedding a heavy burden I had carried for years. "Don't joke around. Do you think you can just submit a divorce application unilaterally?" my husband retorted angrily. "Long-term no contact and separation are grounds for divorce," I calmly replied. "What does that mean? Didn't you know I thought I was fulfilling my duties as a father by sending money? The amount was too insignificant. Do you think children can be raised on money alone? How can you say you've fulfilled your role as a father after neglecting your family for 10 years? A mother is supposed to take care of the kids," he muttered. "There's no point in talking to you." "Yes, I raised her by myself, and we didn't need you," I said. "You were absent for school events, pickups, and preparing lunches. Even when I was sick, the husband I should have relied on was absent. Your presence was unnecessary then, and it still is." "Let's send this," I said, referring to the divorce papers. "Wait, are you serious? What are you planning to do from now on, Judy? Please help. What should Paul and I do when we get older?" my mother-in-law pleaded, trembling with fear. "You're essentially asking Hannah and me to be your helpers or caregivers?" I asked. "No, that's not what I meant. I don't know what to tell you unless I have something I owe you. What about the $3 million inheritance? Let's use it more effectively," my mother-in-law said desperately. "Where did the $3 million come from? If it's divided among siblings, that implies a $9 million inheritance. That couldn't be possible," I responded, confused. "It's a misunderstanding. There wasn't such a large sum in the first place. Even if there were, I would never build a house for us to live together," I declared firmly, facing my bewildered mother-in-law and tearful husband. "Judy, are you really going to leave me behind?" my husband pleaded. "Continue living at your beloved parents' home as you wish." "Goodbye," I said, resolute. 3 months passed. My ex-husband's ceaseless demands for reconciliation bordered on stalking. His lengthy messages, sent over 20 times a day, went unread. When I hinted at legal action, he backed down. The divorce papers were finally processed without issue. Looking back, my ex-husband and mother-in-law's self-centered imaginations led them to believe others should take care of them. It was a pitiful sight. Even Hannah is striving to become independent. She plans to move out and live on her own after getting a job, a suggestion I made. Though I'll be lonely, it will be a great experience for her to understand the value of money, time, and family. As for myself, I've been offered a full-time position at the company where I worked part-time. After the task of raising a child ended, they strongly recommended me. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Following the divorce, I'm studying diligently to get a certification, excited about this new journey. When I shared the news with my daughter, she said, "Mom, you're like a new employee, just like me." We laughed together. Time flows equally for everyone, but how we spend those 10 years varies. There will be enjoyable times and moments when things don't go as planned. Maybe after another 10 years, some conclusions will be reached. I plan to live freely, just as my daughter wished for me.